Nandana, my good friend, Project Coordinator, Global Water Initiative, staff of Water Resources Commission, officials of Care International and Catering Relief Services, our friends from the media, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a great pleasure to be part of this important program, which centers on educating us on achieving sustainable access to water. As we all know, which the chief has said, water is life. But in the midst of a growing population, urbanization, and diversified demands for it, it is increasingly becoming scarce, and climate change would even aggravate the situation. This means that water is important, but finite and vulnerable. It is for this reason that Ghana, as a country, found it necessary to develop and adopt a national policy on water. Now, Chairman, the water policy document, I can assure you, is of high standard in many respects, even though it could still be subjected to further improvement. We're here this morning not to subject the water policy to scrutiny, but get an insight into its contents and to apply the principles it espouses as we work to improve our lot in the water sector. I wish to thank Care International, Catering Relief Services, and the International Union of Conservation of Nature on one hand, and the Water Resources Commission on the other hand, for finding it necessary to organize this program. Now, Chairman, I would like to first of all appeal to the presenters to tone down on the use of technical language in order to reach out effectively to participants. I would also like to appeal to participants to give listening ears to presentations so that we will be in a position to apply the principles and requirements to our work, both as public officials and leaders in our various communities. We need to remind ourselves that the water policy was developed for a purpose and not just for the sake of having it. Ladies and gentlemen, the water policy is meant to provide us with a sense of direction and content in our planning and implementation of water delivery to meet our socio-economic needs. It is therefore unacceptable for any district, municipal or metropolitan or any other form of public agency whose mandate is to deliver water either for domestic, agriculture or industrial use not to be seen applying the principles and requirements. This requires awareness and understanding of the document. The opportunity given us by the consortium of NGOs and our own Water Resources Commission must therefore not be taken for granted, but must be given the attention that it deserves. We cannot afford to lock up the policy document in the shelves. Now, Chairman, I'm reliably informed that the past few years, a consortium of NGOs, namely Care International, the Catering Relief Services, and the International Union of Conservation of Nature, who are implementing partners of the Global Water Initiative, have been implementing water projects in the Nadoli and Lara districts in the Upper West region here. I'm happy to know that they have been targeting and reaching out to some of the poor but hard to service communities who inadvertently have been left out in our efforts to provide potable drinking water and water for agriculture for the people of the Upper West region. Now, Chairman, the case of the poor but hard to service communities should prompt us to remember that as a region whose access to water is higher than the national average, there remains inequities in our water delivery system. We therefore need to appreciate and commend these NGOs for the critical interventions and to learn the lesson of reaching out to the poor but hard to service communities in our future strategies and plans. We also need to extend our appreciation to the Howard G. Buffett Foundation, which is the source of funding for these NGOs. Now, Chairman, a cursory look at the National Water Policy document greets one with some concepts and phenomena that require comments. I'm referring to the integrated water resource management approach, climate variability and change, and gender equality. As agents of development in our region, we need to pay attention to understand these concepts and phenomena in order to integrate the principles into our water delivery plans and strategies. By so doing, we could be on the way to promoting sustainable access to water. In particular, projections into the future give indications of declining water availability as a result of the effects of climate variability and change. This calls for efficient and innovative ways of managing water as a resource, with water harvesting being one of the proposed adaptation measures. Incidentally, the Catholic Church has already taken the lead in making room for water harvesting in almost all the accommodation facilities in this region. And I wish to commend the Church for that and to entreat the people of the region to emulate this good example. Well, it's not by accident. The Church has always set the pace for everything, the Catholic Church, particularly in the Upper West region here. So it's not by accident that they are setting the pace again in water harvesting. We should begin to roof our houses with water harvesting in mind. In the same way, communities living close to water bodies must avoid practices such as farming very close to such water bodies. And I want to entreat all these assemblies to particularly pay attention to this aspect, possibly pass bylaws to prevent people getting close to our water bodies to make their farms. Now, Chairman, Ghana, as we all know, is an agricultural country, and our region is even more into agriculture than any other sector. It stands to reason, therefore, that we as a region are even more threatened by the consequences of climate change, as our agriculture depends more on rain. This means that we have no option than to take adaptation practices that relate to alternative sources of water and conservation more serious. I want to say assemblies and agricultural development organizations are required to set up and to upscale their efforts in order to contain the emphasized effects of climate change. To be able to live up to expectation on this, our technocrats need to build their knowledge and skills on water management as a whole, including the climate change dimension, and especially on adaptation practices. That is why I'm urging you to take this workshop very serious as a starting point. Now, Chairman, the new NDPC guidelines, that's National Development Planning Commission guidelines, to district assemblies require that assemblies mainstream climate change into their plans. Furthermore, the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning directed MMDAs should budget for climate change activities. On this basis, I'm using this occasion to direct the Regional Planning and Coordinating Unit of the Upper West Regional Coordinating Council to do an assessment of the medium-term development plans of all our municipal and district assemblies for climate change content. They should also look out to ascertain if they have provided budget lines for these in their annual budgets. We need to be proactive in combating the effects of climate change in order to guard against food insecurity, and water is key in this regard. The uncertainties associated with climate change are disrupting the planning ability of our farmers. And those of you who are farmers in this part of the country would have noticed that last year, the rains virtually stopped around June, and throughout the whole year, that ended it there. So we had a very poor harvest as a result of that. Improving water availability and accessibility is the way out, and the National Water Policy shows the way. So let us acquaint ourselves with the contents and apply the principles and direction to arrest the situation. The importance of water transcends all of the 8 Millennium Development Goals, and so improving availability and accessibility, especially with quality in mind, imply that we would be making progress towards achieving the MDGs. So let us take the National Water Policy serious. On this note, now, Chairman, distinguished participants, it is my pleasure to declare this workshop duly open, and I wish you well. Thank you.